Hello. If your eyes have difficulty seeing up close, I will tell you what to do from start to finish.
Today, we're diving into something that affects millions of people, but is still really misunderstood: farsightedness, or what doctors call hypermetropia. And trust me, it's about way more than just having trouble with a menu. It's the story of an eye that is constantly, secretly, working in overdrive just to keep your world from going blurry.
So let me ask you something. Do your eyes ever just ache after reading for a while? Or do you get those weird nagging headaches after you've been on the computer and you can't figure out why? Well, that might not just be a sign you need a break. It could actually be your eyes trying to tell you something much, much bigger is going on. So here's our game plan. First, we'll break down what farsightedness actually is. Then we'll get into why it makes your eyes work so hard. After that, and this is important, we'll uncover some serious hidden dangers. Then we'll look at how you get a proper diagnosis, and finally, we'll go through all the ways you can treat it.
All right, first up, what are we even talking about when we say farsightedness? It really all comes down to basic physics and how your eye is built.
Okay, so in a nutshell, hypermetropia is a type of refractive error. That's just a fancy way of saying your eye has a focusing problem. When light enters your eye, it's supposed to land perfectly on the retina at the very back to give you a sharp picture. But with farsightedness, the light actually tries to focus behind the retina. This is why things far away can look totally clear, but anything up close is a blurry mess.
Probably the easiest way to wrap your head around this is to compare it to its famous cousin, nearsightedness. You know, with nearsightedness, or myopia, light focuses in front of the retina, making stuff far away blurry. Farsightedness is the literal opposite of that. The light focuses behind the retina. So naturally, the fix is the opposite too. We use convex, or plus lenses, to help pull that focus point forward right where it belongs.
Okay, so we know what it is, but why does it cause so much strain and those headaches? This is where it gets really interesting, because it's not about the blur itself, but about the incredible non-stop efforts your eye makes to fight it. And it's so important to get this. Farsightedness isn't a disease. It's just anatomy. It usually happens for one of two reasons. Either your eyeball is a little shorter than average from front to back, or your cornea, the clear front part of your eye, is a bit too flat to bend light properly. And most of the time, yeah, you can thank your parents for it. It's usually genetic.
Now we get to the root of the problem. Your eye has this amazing built-in autofocus system, right? It's called accommodation. But if you're farsighted, that system is stuck in overdrive. Every time you look at something up close, the tiny muscles inside your eye have to flex and squeeze the eye's natural lens to force that light to focus correctly. I mean, imagine flexing your bicep and just holding it there for hours. That is exactly what your eye is doing.
And that relentless muscle work is what leads to the symptoms people actually feel. A lot of the time, it's not even about blurry vision. It's that chronic eye strain, that tired, achy feeling. It's the headaches, the burning sensation. It's that moment where you just can't hold your focus any longer. And for kids, that intense focusing effort can be so strong, it can actually cause their eyes to cross inward.
But here's the really sneaky part. When you're young, your eye's autofocus muscle is so strong and flexible that it can compensate for the problem perfectly. You could pass a vision test with flying colors, reading 20/20 on the chart, and have no idea your eyes are secretly waging a war just to get you there. This is what we call latent hypermetropia, the farsightedness that's hidden by your eye's own hard work.
And that brings us to something really critical. Because letting this condition go uncorrected isn't just about being uncomfortable. It can actually lead to some very real, very serious dangers down the line.
Now, the risks are a bit different depending on your age. For kids, the big one is amblyopia, or what most people call a lazy eye. If one eye is much more farsighted than the other, the brain just learns to ignore the blurry picture from that eye. And if you don't catch it and correct it early on, that can lead to permanent vision loss. For adults, that shorter eyeball anatomy can cause a plumbing problem. The drainage system inside the eye can be too narrow, putting you at a much higher risk for a blockage, which causes a sudden, painful, and dangerous spike in eye pressure called angle closure glaucoma.
Okay, so knowing all of that, how do we find out what's really going on inside the eye? It all starts with getting the right kind of diagnosis.
And really, the entire challenge is right here. A standard vision test might just show you what your eye can accomplish when it's working at 110%. But to really help, an eye doctor has to figure out how much work the eye is doing in secret. They have to uncover that latent, hidden part.
This is why a dilated eye exam, specifically what's called a cycloplegic refraction, is absolutely crucial. The special eye drops they use basically hit the pause button on that hard-working autofocus muscle. They force it to relax, and only when that muscle is fully relaxed can the doctor measure the eye's true baseline prescription. This is the only way to find out the full story and get a prescription that actually relieves that constant strain.
All right, let's head into the home stretch. Once you have that real diagnosis, what are the next steps? The good news is, there are a ton of great options for pretty much every person at every age.
And just remember, the point of treatment isn't just about acing the eye chart. The real goal is to provide clear vision while also giving those exhausted eye muscles a much-deserved vacation. A proper treatment lets an external lens, whether it's in glasses or from surgery, do all the heavy lifting so your eyes can finally, truly relax.
So let's look at the toolkit. Of course, you have glasses and contacts. They're the go-to, non-invasive choice for all ages, and they are essential for kids. For adults who want something more permanent, you have laser procedures like LASIK and PRK that reshape the front of the eye. They work great for prescriptions up to about +4. For folks with higher prescriptions, an implantable lens, or ICL, can be placed inside the eye. And then for people over 45 who are also starting to need reading glasses, a refractive lens exchange can solve both problems at the same time. It's basically like having cataract surgery, just a little earlier.
So, let's quickly recap the big takeaways. 1. Farsightedness is about the eye's shape, which forces it to constantly work overtime. 2. The biggest symptoms are often headaches and eye strain, not just blur. 3. Don't forget the hidden dangers, lazy eye in kids, and a risk of glaucoma in adults. 4. A dilated exam is the gold standard for finding the real prescription. And 5. There are tons of great treatment options, from glasses to surgery, for every situation.
You see, farsightedness is so much more than meets the eye. It's a story of hidden effort, hidden symptoms, and hidden risks. So the question I want to leave you with is, now that you know the whole story, are you ready to take the steps to make sure you're seeing your world not just clearly, but finally comfortably?
You know that feeling when you're squinting at your phone or you get a headache after just a few minutes of reading? It's so easy to just brush that off as, eye strain. But what if it's a sign of something more? Today, we're going to focus our lens on farsightedness, a vision condition that's way more common and honestly way more complex than you might think.
So let's start there. Picture this. You've settled in with a good book, or maybe you're just scrolling through social media. But it doesn't take long before your eyes start to feel, tired, strained. And then maybe that dull ache kicks in and builds into a really frustrating headache. Sound familiar? If it does, trust me, you are not alone. That strain, those headaches, they are classic signs of something called hypermetropia. It's a bit of a mouthful, right? It's just the medical term for farsightedness. And at its core, it's a simple refractive error that makes it really tough for your eyes to focus on anything up close.
So what exactly is farsightedness then? We all tend to associate it with just, blurry words on a page. But the real problem is the constant, hidden effort your eyes are making behind the scenes. And that effort, it comes with a whole surprising set of symptoms.
This is why it's so much more than just blurry vision. See, a farsighted eye is basically working in overdrive all the time. To focus on anything up close, the tiny muscles inside the eye have to strain incredibly hard. And that relentless effort is what leads to the eye fatigue, that aching or burning feeling, and of course, those persistent headaches. Now, in kids, this strain can be so intense that it can actually cause their eyes to cross.
Okay, so what is physically happening inside the eye to cause all this strain? The science behind it is actually pretty straightforward. It all comes down to the simple anatomy of your eye.
It really is all about where light focuses. Think of it this way. In an eye with perfect vision, light comes in, passes through the cornea and the lens, and hits a perfect focus point right on the retina. Kind of like a projector hitting a screen perfectly. Sharp image, right? But in a farsighted eye, that focus point falls behind the retina, and that tiny little error is what makes your brain see a blurry image. So, why does this happen? Well, this focusing mistake almost always boils down to one of two physical reasons. By far the most common cause is an eyeball that's just a little bit shorter than average from front to back. A less common reason is that the cornea, that's the clear dome at the front of your eye, is just a little too flat, so it can't bend the light enough. Either way, the result is exactly the same. That focus point lands in the wrong spot. And this brings us to a really crucial point. farsightedness isn't just an inconvenience that gives you headaches. If you leave it uncorrected, it can lead to some serious and sometimes even permanent vision problems. This is especially true for very young kids and for older adults.
You see, especially in children and young adults, the eye's natural lens is super flexible. It can actually change its own shape to compensate for the farsightedness. It's a process called accommodation. This is amazing, and it can mask the problem so they might actually see pretty clearly. But this constant hidden work puts the eye's focusing muscles under tremendous stress, and that stress can lead to some major consequences down the road.
Let's break down these risks because they're important. For kids, the number one danger is amblyopia, what we commonly call a lazy eye. If the brain keeps getting a blurry picture from one eye, it can eventually just start to ignore it. If that's not caught and treated early, it can lead to permanent vision loss. Now for adults, especially over 40, that shorter eyeball anatomy creates a physical risk for something called angle closure glaucoma. This is a serious condition where fluid inside the eye can't drain right, causing a sudden, dangerous spike impression.
Okay, so after all that serious talk, here's the good news. While the risks are real, there is a full spectrum of highly effective solutions out there to correct hypermetropia, relieve all that strain, and prevent these long-term problems from ever happening.
The path to clear vision usually follows a pretty logical progression. It almost always starts with eyeglasses. They use what are called convex or plus power lenses that help the eye focus light correctly back onto the retina. Simple, safe, effective. Contact lenses do the same job, they just sit right on the eye. Then, for people who want a more permanent fix, you've got surgical options that can either reshape the cornea with a laser or, in more advanced cases, even involve implanting a new lens right inside the eye.
Now, when we talk about surgery, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. The best option really depends on your age and your prescription. LASIK, for example, is fantastic for many people with moderate farsightedness. But for those with higher prescriptions, something called an ICL, which is like a tiny micro-thin lens placed inside the eye, can be a game changer. And then for patients over 45, a refractive lens exchange, or RLE, actually replaces the eye's natural lens. The cool thing about that is it not only fixes the farsightedness, but it also means you'll never get cataracts.
So, what's the single most important thing to take away from all of this? It's simple, really. Being proactive about your eye health is absolutely key. Farsightedness just isn't something to ignore or tough out.
In the end, proactive care just makes all the difference. This is especially true for kids. An eye exam between the ages of 1 and 2 can literally be sight-saving, catching problems early enough to prevent permanent vision loss. For adults, regular exams are your best defense against those bigger risks like glaucoma. And for all of us, simple daily habits like the 20-20-20 rule, every 20 minutes, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds, that can make a huge difference in reducing digital eye strain.
And that brings us to a final thought. It's not just about seeing clearly day to day. It's about protecting your sight for your entire lifetime. Farsightedness is a perfect example of a condition where understanding what's really going on allows you to take control of your own eye health. So the question is, are you seeing the full picture?